Well, really? What's up, man? How are you?
He does not care.
He does not. That's Brian. Brian, if you listen to Joe Rogan podcast, Brian's like my Jamie.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I love her.
No, it's a guy.
Oh.
On Joe Rogan. You never listen to Joe Rogan podcast?
Not really. I don't really. Do you listen to podcasts or just your own?
No, I don't.
You go home and listen to them?
I don't listen to my own podcast, but I do listen. I listen to Joe Rogan when he has on comedians like Tom Segura, and it's kind of inspiring. You know,
I don't. I sometimes I'll listen to him if I'm driving, like to LA or something. But
okay.
That, I don't even listen to music anymore.
What do you do in your car then?
When I'm driving?
Yeah.
I usually, believe it or not, I usually listen to like podcasts, but not like comedy podcasts, like real podcasts. Like,
what? Excuse me?
About real people being honest.
Okay.
And being funny people. Not comedians.
You know what? I think you're lying, Mark. I think you don't even listen to podcasts. Name the podcast you listen to.
I don't. I have it on my phone. Oh, no. Yeah, podcast. About computer programming usually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you into that?
No, I like to sleep while I drive.
Are you? Did you ever get into those crime shows and crime podcasts?
Yeah, I was driving once and I got into. I was listening to this podcast and I thought it was great and I listened to it again a couple times, and then I realized it was a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in like 10 years. Karen Kilgariff. Have you ever heard that one?
No.
She does it about real murders.
Isn't
it's
it
a top podcast, I believe?
Isn't that crazy? People are fascinated with murders,
and they're funny too. So yeah.
What do you mean they're funny?
Not murders are funny, but the podcast is they have insight and wit, but they describe what happens, and I watch that on TV too. I mostly watch reality stuff.
Yeah,
I mean not reality stuff like crime stuff and stuff like that. 60 Days In. I think that's where I first saw you actually.
Oh, in the crime? Yeah. Let me tell you.
Do you know what 60 Days In is?
No. What is that?
It's amazing what these people do. They go into like normal people like you and I, or more like you probably.
Yeah.
Normal people, and they check themselves into a jail for 60 or 90 days.
For what?
And nobody else knows, and no one can save them. I have no idea why they do it.
Is that a real thing, or is that just for a show? So you're saying any normal person,
somebody that has an interest in it, obviously for some reason,
can check themselves
within this TV show anyway.
Really?
It's in the context of a TV show, yeah. It's called it's on Netflix or Amazon or something like that.
That's wild, man.
I always after I watch Blasian, I usually
I
put on that on Amazon.
Amazon Prime Blasian. Watch it over and over. You still haven't left a review, and I'm very upset about that, Mark. I got to tell you who's on the podcast if you're just tuning in. What I love about this guy is we probably only met like a month and a half ago. When this club opened up again. Reopened after the pandemic at Rio. We're at the Comedy Cellar, Las Vegas. What I love about you, you have the same energy every night. You're always fun. You get the audience going, and your stories are crazy because you've been with the Comedy Cellar how long?
Well, I've been from New York.
Yeah.
Jesus, probably 87 maybe.
87
or 7. I mean, it was one of the last. I got into little clubs first, and then you worked up, and then I got into the improvisation in New York on 44th Street, and then I was able to get into the Cellar. You've
kind of seen everything.
I guess so. I was at the comedy boom when is that what they called it? The comedy boom?
Well, okay, when was that comedy boom, and who was in that boom? Because this is one reason why I wanted to do this podcast is I never had the experience of hanging out with comedians because I started comedy really late in my life, but the green room now, I'm meeting a bunch of comedians, and I'm officially hanging with comedians for the first time. So I wanted to start this podcast to kind of find out what I've been missing about the history of the Cellar and just comedy in general.
Well, the comedy boom, you didn't hang out with comedians really but the comedy boom was that every pizza shop, every bar had a comedy show.
In New York?
It was based in New York, but New York, there's the tri-state area, so there was Jersey and Connecticut and Long Island. So you would drive an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, and do the gig with 2 other comics. So you were hanging out with comics a little bit.
And what was the what years are we talking about right here?
I would think I started probably like 84, 85 doing the road, and I made more money the first year because I had a car and a guitar. And so I'd go out every night, you drive, you made $100 a night or $75 or whatever it was, but you did it every night, And then I would come to the city and do 6 or 7 sets a night. I mean, the shows would go, I had just started, so the Improv was the first place I worked that was a good club. I would get a spot at 2:30 a.m.
Wow.
So I would be home sleeping. I'd set my alarm for 1 o'clock, and then I'd go over to the Improv, and there'd be a line out the door till 4 a.m. of people trying to get in.
When did you know that comedy was your thing? Did you try it once and then you were hooked, or did people always tell you were funny?
I did it in high school at a talent show, and I wrote like a fake newscast, but it was original material. There's a manager named Barry Katz. I don't know if you know Barry Katz.
I mean, he's legendary in the industry. Isn't he responsible? Yeah, isn't he responsible for like a bunch of big comedians?
Yeah, he had everybody in New York at one point. And I went to high school with him. And he told me later, I didn't remember, that he was in the competition with me and that I did original material and he did Bob Newhart's material.
What was a lot of people copying? Is that he just copied Bob Newhart's set, or what?
In high school. I mean,
you were in high school.
In the context of a talent show,
Got you.
Okay.
Got you.
Hey,
so you're talking about 85, 86. That was the comedy boom. Let's say that was a boom. Who was big at that time?
Bob, people that you probably wouldn't.
I don't know a lot of people, and
because they were great. I mean, they were on the Tonight Show and stuff like that. But I'm actually in the middle. My school, my grade or whatever. What do you call it when people are in your class? My class.
Your class,
comedians
yes.
Was like Dave Attell, Kevin Brennan, Louis C.K., me, Jon Stewart. I don't know what happened to those other guys, but I did.
Out of those guys, if you could take yourself back to 85, 86, who do you think out of that group you just named was going to bust and be huge?
I would have thought Attell. And he did, obviously.
I mean, Attell's doing great.
But he was just a funny guy. He just constantly coming up with, always new and fresh, and people started to copy him in a lot of ways, or people said, "Oh, you're copying Attell, or you're doing Attell." Not to me, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You see young comedians, and it is cool that I've been in so long that I see people like Sarah Silverman. Now there's people that do Sarah that you can see they've inspired them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of interesting.
And who were the comics you hung out with? Because you have some phenomenal pictures you've shown me.
Man, I used to have
Who was your crew?
It was those guys, Attell and Brennan and Bill Grunfest, who owned the Comedy Cellar, or who opened the Comedy Cellar anyway in New York.
And was
his idea.
And was Sarah part of your crew as well?
Sarah, she was going out with Attell at the time, I think.
And
Kevin Brennan and was there, and I mean I would take pictures of every comedian that came through.
I know you have phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Lost.
You lost it?
Lost. Everybody had been in that apartment. Who's the guy? Mr. Jones. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
The Counting Crows were in my house. I mean, people would come by because they knew somebody.
Was it around the Comedy Cellar? It was close?
It was close enough.
It was close enough.
Ray Romano was in my class as well.
Wow.
Yeah, there's some great comedians.
Who surprises you that they were huge? Because we see people coming up, and then you're like, wow, they got huge. And you might, when you were in the moment, not think they were going to be that huge.
Well, my first instinct was Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
But he was so new at the time. But there was something, he was a handsome guy. And he was charming. We would only do 5 or 6 minutes then, and he would die for like 5 minutes, and then he had one joke and it would kill, and that was the end. But you could see glimpses of, he wasn't political or anything. It was just, but he was.
How was the Cellar back then?
It was amazing. I mean, it's a different world. When I come here now, and people that come through the Cellar are have so much reverence and get nervous and about working here, and it's a goal to be here. When I was there, it was a goal because it was a great club, but sometimes we'd go in on a Monday night and it would be nobody in the audience. So and the owner would make us get up and do a show for nobody. He'd make the waitresses sit there. So if somebody came in, they could see, that there was a show going on.
It's interesting that even at the Comedy Store, I hear stories. I wasn't there at the time, but the club was dead. Like nobody would go to the Comedy Store. And then all of a sudden about 9 years ago, I don't know if it's a boom, but it was a comedy resurgence again, where all these clubs, these legendary clubs, are getting packed. I know the Cellar's been going Probably about 15 years on that.
It
on
sounds
that wave.
incongruous what I'm saying, though, because at one time I'm saying it's the comedy boom, and then at the other hand I'm saying it was empty.
Yeah.
You know? And it wasn't empty, obviously, but it would be at 9 o'clock at night. And it would, when I was there would be one MC from 9 at night till 2 in the morning. And now I think in that time frame they have 2 shows or 3 shows.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's amazing when I was just, I wasn't part of the Comedy Cellar family, but I remember last time I went to New York, they let me in the club. I believe I met Liz that night. And she kind of walked me around. She showed me around, which was really nice. But Bill Burr, what I loved about it is literally comics walk a block and they're doing set. Yeah. They're getting 4 or 5 sets.
I had I had the record for many years. It was 9, but I think it's been broken since then. Right?
9 sets.
And Ray broke it, I think. And at the same, you mentioned Bill Burr. Bill Burr was around, and Jim Gaffigan, but they were, I was late night, and they were later night at that point. You know what I mean?
And Bill Burr, how was he when he first started?
He was a nice guy. He was, I don't remember that much except him hanging out and being enthusiastic about comedy. But he wasn't. He didn't tap into his anger, I don't think, at that point.
Was Jim Gaffigan the same as he is now? Like, was his comedy always kind of PC and kind of like?
Yes,
it was.
Yeah, I would think so. It got heightened as time went on.
Mm-hmm.
He was. It was. Who else? Judah Friedlander. I mean, I'm just thinking of people that. Do you know Judah?
Yeah,
absolutely. People that were just late night, and they obviously did really well. And sometimes, I wish I did. I never wanted to be anything but a club comic, kind of. And I was able to do it pretty easily. Whereas these guys like Gaffigan and Bill Burr, they were, were writing and working at it, and obviously they did really well,
When did you become the host of the Comedy Cellar?
Well, I used to host there all the time. And back in the day, the host in New York City in the 80s and 90s was the best guy on the show. It's not, I don't know if it's that way anymore. Maybe the Cellar still is. So when I moved to L.A., I called up the Improv and I was like, hey, I'll MC. And they go, oh, yeah. And then I started MCing, and somebody comes up and he goes, don't MC.
Yeah, in L.A., you don't want to MC. Yeah.
Because that's all you'll be. You'll be, they'll nail you as the MC. And I was like, well, that's where I developed my act. That's where you get new material and stuff. But I did it a couple times, but then I just stopped doing it.
And when did the Cellar explode? Because you said, was it always hot then, or was it?
I'm trying to say. I'm trying to get my timing right, because I guess I had been working as a comedian, for a year or two before I got into the Cellar. So the boom might have kind of faded out a little bit. That it got over too many. There was way too many clubs. I mean, everywhere you went, there was not clubs, but you would do it in a pizza joint, you would do it in an Italian restaurant, It just. But it was great, though. I mean, I'd drive in my car, and we'd do gigs, and, we wouldn't stay overnight necessarily.
What's the craziest moment that happened to you on stage or going to a gig?
The first gig, I used to do an impression of David Crosby from Crosby, Stills, and Nash Young when he was having all his troubles, and I would carry around sugar substitute, equal. And in my act, and I got a quick impersonation, David Crosby, and I'd throw it on my face. And the first gig I ever went, I took my friend, I don't want to say his name now because he's a pretty big-time actor, and he took the ride with me, and we had to drive like 6 hours up to a college. And we had a little, it was in the 70s or 80s, and we had some drugs with us.
Okay.
In the car, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And we had just smoked a joint, and this was when you could get in a lot of trouble. And we got pulled over, and the cop arrested me, and he found the cut that I used in my act for the David Crosby impression. And I'm like, no, I'm using it for my act, and I throw it on my face. And he goes, well, we're going to have to arrest you. And they took it in, and they tested it, and they found out it obviously wasn't coke. It was
coke.
So
they didn't take the friend in?
They didn't take my friend in. And it was.
How did that happen?
Well, because I probably took I
you
was
took
driving, and I said it was mine. And not only that, it was such a small place in upstate New York that it was the cop that arrested me. I got in his car, and he had to open up. He was the only cop. I mean, it was such a small place. He opened up the station and brought me in. And I don't remember if I was handcuffed, but when I got into the station, he handcuffed me to the wall. And that was the only time he got mad at me because he knew I was a comedian. My friend, he wouldn't let my friend in the building. But I'm like, Jerry, oh shit, I said his name. Jerry, I said, Jerry, they're beating me up in here or something. And he's, oh, you can't do that. And that was the only thing. But it was my way to my first gig at a college. And I said, if I lose this gig, I'm screwed. I mean, and they let me go if I promised to come back the next day.
And you came back?
I did, yeah.
That's amazing. And now, you know, we're at the Comedy Cellar in Las Vegas. How long have you been in the family then? With the 26 years then? 27 years?
Was that what it was? 80s?
80s, yeah. What?
80,
yeah.
96, 96. Yeah, no, over 30.
Over 30
Isn't that
years.
Over 30 years?
Yeah. I think I'm dumb, so I don't know. Like that 30 would be 2017.
Yeah, so it's 33
30.
or 4 years. Wow. Is that true?
Yeah.
And I was a late starter, obviously, too. I mean,
what age did you start comedy? And what made you want to start it?
I moved to New York to be an actor. I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts for 2 years. And then I said, well, I missed going to college. If I'm going to be an actor, I have to experience things. I think I said the same thing when I screwed a hooker, too. I said, I got to experience this. But
well, Vegas is the perfect place.
No,
Mark.
this wasn't Vegas. This was in New York City.
They had hookers in New York City, too, huh, at that time? Okay.
I was like 17 or 18 years
old.
You know? But I was like, I have to experience everything. So I went to UMass for a year and did some theater up there. And then I came back and moved to New York to be an actor. And I worked at Wolf's Deli on 57th and 6th and waited on every celebrity you could imagine. And then my girlfriend at the time said, you should do stand-up. And I got up and I did stand-up.
Was she a stand-up that told you that? No.
And I was able to quit my waiter job within a week because of the boom. They just needed comics, and if you had a car, you were all set. You know?
Now, explain that to people, because when you first said that to me, I had no
having
idea.
A car?
Yeah, yeah.
Because not too many people had a car in New York City, and especially I don't know how I had a car. I think my father had an extra car and he gave it to me, so I would have a car. And if you were able to drive the other comedians to the gig, it was easier to get a gig.
Do we know any headliners? Like, what headliners will we know that you drove?
Jeez, I don't even remember. I mean, actually, I headlined most of the time.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And I didn't want to, but I had the guitar and I had energy, and so I would drive, but I was probably but I might not have. I might have middled, or it didn't matter to me. I was. You're just making money.
What do you think about comedy today? Like, seeing what you've seen, because it seems like when everybody gets older, like, it's not as good as when I was young. What's your take on it?
Well, I being here so much and seeing so many comedians, I get down on myself because I never wanted to say anything with my comedy, and not too many people do that anymore. Everyone tries to, and which is nice. But I used to.
You say not too many people do try to say something?
No, people try to be more, they try to reveal more, and I mean, people always did, but I never did. And even like Attell, see, I'm jealous of you in a lot of ways, not your looks or your talent, no, but I can't do what you, I mean, I cut myself off. I probably could. I like to think I could, but I don't think that way. And it kind of bums me out a little bit because
and it bums me out because you're the person where we're in the green room. You're so quick. Every other line is a joke, and my brain does not operate that way. You know, my brain operates in, oh, here's a real story. Let me find the funny in this story, and then I'll tell it on stage. Where like a Mark Norman, a Sam Morril, I see them as a type of comic you are, where they're funny. Sometimes they get into stories, right. But it's all about the quick one-liners, which is amazing.
But I like to think I'm revealing myself to the audience through that.
Okay, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, they know, even though I'm not telling what I am, they know I'm a silly guy or whatever. But that's probably a cop-out on my end. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, if I don't know, because I feel like everybody has their thing, but it's funny that, like a Mark Norman, a Sam Morril, the clips are,
but theirs are a little deeper than mine even. But they work at it, and maybe I inspired that a little bit. By, it sounds stupid, but you know what I'm saying. They go, "Oh, this guy's what I want to do: tell stupid jokes, but make them smarter jokes."
And what's interesting is with Instagram and the whole social media now, those quick jokes are working because you do a 10-second joke, people all watch it, and then they'll share it. where like a story, like one of my stories, you have to invest like a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to get the gist of the full story.
And it's more of a fear for me. Well, there's a couple things why I don't do it.
Yeah.
One is a fear of silence, which I hate.
Which I love. And I get that a lot. Thank you, Derek.
I like it too when I see it. No, but I know what you mean. I missed it.
I know. I was like, I thought you'd be all over that. Come on, Mark, I'm bragging about you over here.
And the other is that I don't think I have anything interesting to say, which is probably not true as well. You know what I mean? But I don't look deep enough into revealing that or whatever. So that kind of, it bothers me a little and sometimes, but then I always found throughout the years that the comedians that liked me were the opposite of me. People like yourself. I mean, I don't know.
I love you on stage.
Smart, great comedians. And I was like, this guy's not going to like me, but they like me because in the same way that I can't do what they do, they can't do what I do, you know, or they don't want, you know what I mean?
The only, you know, I haven't met many comedians.
Which I think is pretty funny.
But I started comedy at 37. So I've been doing it.
I finished at 37.
No, so I started comedy 35, maybe 35. No, I think 36, 37, something around there. So I've been doing it for like 10 years.
That's great.
Right? So I already was past the time of, what I missed was the hanging out. You know, when you're in your early 20s, all you hear is about like the Burrs, the Joe Rogans, the Tom Segura's, everybody that's big now hung out together and they were kind of like a crew coming up. And I never had a crew. It's kind of like Joe Coy mentored me, and then all of a sudden I was touring, but I never had the hang. And that's why I wanted to start this podcast, to start that hang. But
the Cellar really was the only, well, I guess the comedy
store is a hang.
Strip too. That was LA, you know, that was different.
Yeah.
And when it was, you know.
Is the Cellar more about business? Like you do your set lead,
No, but they had the comedy table. So people did start hanging out and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard about the table with Bill Burr, Patrice O'Neal. I mean, Chris Rock, just legends sit at that table.
But when I was there, it was just, you know, me and the owner and, you know, and then it just, I don't know, it was just crazy.
How did it become that table? Like, why?
I don't know, actually.
Yeah.
It's, you know, because maybe they started using the same people, so they had to stay or they added shows. So say you're doing 3 shows, you're on the first and the second or the first and the third, you got nowhere to go, so you hang there. And they give you food and booze, you know.
So is there etiquette to that table? Because
it's changed again. You know? Now I think it's another goal of people to
sit at the table.
Sit at the table.
You have to be invited to the table.
I guess so. You know, I mean, when I show up there, if I show up there now, they're like, Mark's here, you know, and I can sit there because I guess of my history. But
if it's my first time performing in New York, I probably won't get invited to the table.
I don't. You probably would because you're ingratiated now in the Cellar, even though you've never been to the Cellar in New York, right?
Well, as a visitor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can't wait to perform there.
Before you did comedy, or you did comedy?
No, I did comedy, and Liz let me in and walked me. She knew who I was, so she walked me through and things like that, and she was so nice. But
Liz?
Liz was nice. No, actually, Liz was really nice, and she showed me around. I haven't met Esty yet, but
really?
I mean, she's a landmark.
Well, she obviously loves you.
Yeah.
And somebody must be giving you good reviews here. I don't know.
I don't know who's giving me good reviews. So, like, what is your advice to new comics coming up? If you had
well, for me, it was having fun. I mean, the last couple of days here, I don't know if you know, I haven't really been having fun.
And why not, Mark? Are you sad?
No, I'm not. I don't know why. It's just, you know, in this business, you're only as good as your last set.
You know what's interesting? I don't want to cut you off there. I used to believe that, and then I got to the point where I don't feel that pressure anymore.
In your own head.
Absolutely.
In your own head.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how you can crush all week, have one bad show, and then you go, am I still funny?
Or you could crush, and there's one guy not laughing. And then, why is this guy not laughing?
Why haven't you had fun this week, though? Last couple of shows, you think?
You know, probably because I felt I'm doing, because you're only as good as your last set.
Yes.
And I'm doing 4 sets a night within the show. And I've always found I do, no matter how well I do in the first 10 minutes, which I'm pretty consistent at doing well. I got that down. But the acts here are so good that every time I go on, they're less interested in me, no matter how much they loved me at the beginning. And so it's something I have to accept as well. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I think you see
Now, how do you
comedians. I think that's why you see comedians. Like I could go on and do 10 minutes in between each act if I wanted to. Nobody would say anything to me, but I don't. I'm here for the show, and I'll feel like once they start. They want to see the next guy because the last guy was good. I'm good, they think, and then the first guy's good. This next guy's going to be better. We don't need to hear him anymore, kind of. And I don't take it personal.
Well, you don't? Or?
It could just be a cop-out, too. Do you know what I mean? It could be a way for me to go, I'm not going to do anything anymore anyway. I did my job, and I'll just move it along,
Yeah, I find this place, I've been in Vegas for a very short while, but what I love about this club is everybody's a home run hitter. Like, you're not going to find a bad comedian on the bill.
And different. Well, and also, Paul Mooney, who just died.
Yes. Did you know Paul?
I'd say no. I didn't know. But I was at the Comedy Store at 11:15 set, and he was going on. Or I don't know if he came in or he had a spot, but he came out. He was supposed to do 10 minutes. He did an hour and a half, but really just raw, open, honest stuff. And my act, like I said, is just kind of silly.
Yeah.
So when I went on after him, I just died a miserable death. And I could have talked myself into dying because I go, this is going to suck because he's up there talking about race and, real serious stuff. And then I'm, hey, this is Robert De Niro.
So,
was a little,
So do you, when you saw Paul Mooney perform, is it like jokes, or is it more conscious thinking?
And then, you mean?
Yeah.
He was just sitting on a stool kind of talking at the time, yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to follow if you're a boom guy.
And I wasn't that familiar with his comedy, but I knew it was going to be hard to follow because it was. I respected what he was doing, but I also hated him because he was doing an hour and a half before me because I was trying to leave.
Why didn't you leave?
Because I didn't know he could have got. I don't know why I didn't leave actually, because he could have gotten off in a minute. I didn't know when he was getting off. I probably wanted to do a spot at the store.
It was this at the Comedy Store in L.A.?
Comedy Store in L.A., yeah.
What year was this? Do you remember how far back this was? And tell me, how was the Comedy Store when you were there? Was it like the Comedy Store today?
I don't know. I did work there, and I auditioned for Mitzi, and I passed that day, and she was, oh, you're good. And then she started using me, and she used me in the big room, the main room.
The main room, yeah.
Which I thought was like one of my first couple sets there, and I was like, this is great.
Oh, the main room.
And then I went into another room.
The OR.
Like, oh, this one's not as good for me.
OR. Oh, here's what's interesting. The main room is great, man. The OR can be fire.
That the middle one?
Yeah, but there's something.
But it seemed like a New York club at the time.
I don't know what it is about that room because I've seen the best comics die in that room too. But the belly room where Dave Chappelle just shot his special, which is the one upstairs.
That's
that club is phenomenal. It only holds like 80 people in there, and that's probably one of my favorite.
Last special.
That's where he shot his last special, and that room is so fire, man. It is. If you get that room hot, it's ridiculous.
Now I was at the Cellar, Chappelle's first night.
Back?
No, ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
The way I remember it is that he was.
What year? If you had to guess.
90.
Okay, so this is Dave Chappelle's first time at the Cellar.
Yes, he was probably 19.
And was he known? Like, was there a buzz around him then?
No, but yes, I guess. Because I saw him that night. He was just amazing from the beginning. It was just, he had it, whatever it was. He was the mind, the process. A comedian named Rondell Sheridan, I think, saw him around the corner and came up to Esty and said, you got to see this guy. So she said, bring him by, So she brought him by, and I was just, So somebody knew who he was a little bit, but he was, like I said, he was a kid,
Did you meet him that night? Or?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Oh, because you brought him up. You were the host that night.
I couldn't say that I was for sure, but maybe I could have been. I don't remember that.
And how was he? How was he when you met him back then?
He was a good, he was a kid. He was a kid. We hung out. He would probably come over to my house, but there was always people over there. We'd just get high after doing 6 or 7 sets. But he was, and he also didn't live there. He lived in Washington, I think, at the time, and drove in to do sets.
Do you Dave Chappelle? You said they just got it. It. Has there ever been other comedians that you've seen, right off the bat, and you go, okay, they got it?
I thought all these guys were funny. Louis and Attell and Brennan. And Louis was just so out there, though.
Now, I don't know if you can repeat this, but tell me, you said he would just go on stage and make noises?
Yeah, Louis sometimes, when there would be, there wouldn't be anybody in the room, and he would just go into the mark. And just be, you'd have to go in the back, just covering your ears because he was so loud, But he had a great mind, I got mad at him once because I had an old car, and I was like, I'm going to get rid of the car. He goes, oh, sell it to me. And I was like, really? It still runs. And I sold it to him for like $125 or something, and he just drove it to Boston and left it there. I was like, why did you leave it there? I would have loaned it to you. It was a car. It was a running car.
So I don't know if you ever answered the question. Did you have any advice for newer comedians coming? I know you said now the big thing is to tell your story, get your story out. But what do you have a piece of?
But you're right though. The people that when you mentioned Sam
Morrell
and Mark Norman, those are the guys that I would have come through here that I didn't know, that I remember and go, oh, these guys are funny.
Yeah.
In my way. I mean, they have a great. I wish I could put more effort into my act and write like that.
Well, I've never met I meet a lot of people. I meet a lot of people, comedians as well. But you're quick, man. Like when you're in your space.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes and people make jokes about it, but I'm probably funnier in there than on stage.
No, you are, 100%, 100%. I said you should do all your sets from the green room.
and also, like when I had a lot of trouble, when I have to do like an hour or 40, 50 minutes, which I haven't done in years, I would have to stretch, so I would stretch at the beginning by doing crowd work. And then I would, I'd be killing it. And then I would start my act, and they're like, oh,
we don't like
what's going on? This guy's not funny anymore.
What's the key to your crowd work? Because everybody has different philosophies on crowd work. Do you just go for it, or?
I mean, I actually probably just asked, now in the context of this room, and I'm the MC, and I come out, and people are from so many different areas of the country or the world that I find I just say, well, where are you from, and what do you do, and hopefully that springboards into something.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I used to advise comedians, which I probably don't do as much anymore, is
you should though. You got so much knowledge.
No, I'm saying is when you come out, if you say a joke that the audience knows that you just made up, you're free to do whatever because you've already proved you're funny. If they know, like something fell right before you were gonna, put that in or whatever you would say.
Yeah.
They go, oh, this guy's gonna be funny because he can deal with it. When you first, I didn't know you really as a comedian.
Our first time.
Here, and
this is my first time being introduced.
And Michael's standing waiting to get pulled up, and I'm doing a joke, and it probably didn't go that.
No, it went horribly wrong.
Horribly, the joke, and Michael said, "Oh, thanks for." Wrecking them or something before you bring. I don't know.
No, thanks for killing the
room or something.
Killing the room for me.
And it was a joke, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was based in truth. But I said to myself, this guy's gonna be funny. He's being funny off stage,
And we went back and forth, which was fun because we went back and forth a couple of times, and then you brought me up, and it was like an amazing moment.
I love when comedians get mad at other comedians. First of all, like if I'll say this guy sucks, when I introduce him. And they get mad at me. I was like, well, you're going to be on stage for 10 minutes. Why don't you just say that I suck? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't understand. You're a comedian. You're making it's a joke.
I do want to work out something with you because a lot of times I close the shows here. I would love to have you come out with a guitar. I don't sing that well, but we need to figure out something to end the show, like a song or something.
I used to use the guitar, and it got stolen, and I just didn't like lugging it
I'll
around.
buy you a guitar. I want. We need to figure out something to close the shows because I loved when Jeffrey Ross came by. And you were just on the piano, and it totally changed the vibe of the whole room. And it's more of it got out of a comedy show, and it was more of, oh, this is an experience that I'm not going to get anywhere else, which is awesome.
What helped me cement my history in the cellar was the comedian Rick Chrome, who was the piano player at the cellar at the time, and he'd go, "You want me to stay up with you?" And so he would stay up on stage with me. He'd be behind the piano, but I would doing my act, but he knew my act so well. He'd go, hey, and he would lead me into my jokes. And I have no memory. I wouldn't remember stuff. And then we would make up songs and stuff. So the audience kind of, I don't think the other comedians liked it that much because they'd have
you would crush.
And we would crush, and it would be singing and sweating and dancing and,
Well, I would love to create that moment with you here, man, because this room at times Well, not at times. I mean, this room always has the potential because it's so small and compact. Because I really learned a lot that night when Jeffrey Ross was here. Just that adding, because
think of Zach Galifianakis or something for that matter.
Because to me, you can do your set and crush. That's great. And people will leave the comedy show going, oh, they were great. Like, I hear people leaving all the time go, that was an amazing show. But when they left that night, just because you were on the piano, like if he would have just told his jokes, it was a comedy show.
Right.
But when you bring it just creates a great atmosphere, man. And I would love to create that before people leave.
Well, I don't know if you remember that night too. There was a fight in the audience. Remember, right as I was bringing,
yes,
there's like almost a fist fight broke out.
It literally right here front of the stage.
Yeah, you actually were talking.
I'm
the
one that stopped
stage, right?
Yeah, I'm the one that stopped the fight. Yeah.
So it helped to, yeah. And he came. Jeff, to his credit, came up with it. He came up and said something like, "Oh, I'm glad I brought my bulletproof vest," or something.
Yeah, to the comedy
whatever
show,
the joke was, and the audience again, it was the same kind of thing. Not that they didn't know he was funny to begin with, but they go, "Oh, that guy just made that joke up."
Yeah,
and he said it to us, and we're all in this together,
Well, I know, like, we have to open up the cellar tonight, so we're gonna wrap this up. But you're gonna be on all the time. I do want to get more.
It was very serious today.
Oh no, it's always no. You know what I like is that. Like the person I look up to is Joe Rogan, because I love how comedians can be on a show and they laugh a little here and there. But I'm using this podcast to get educated in comedy, because I kind of fell into it and it worked out great for me.
Yeah.
But I want to learn history of comedy. I want to learn, the stories I hear off stage are great. And I just want to inform other people that are checking, listening to this podcast for the first time. This is what you're gonna get. You're gonna get funny moments, but you're gonna get a lot of history and comedy. And
Joe was a guy that was around too, but he was more of a road. I was a club comic in the city, and he was a road comic.
Out of Boston.
He's from Boston too?
Yeah,
I'm from
Rogan.
Massachusetts too.
Yeah, he went to. I think he actually taught some Taekwondo type of class at UMass, or he went to UMass for a year.
Did you ever go to the Just for Laughs festival yet?
You know what's interesting is I got caught in a situation, and let me tell you my struggle with comedy is I never get invited to festivals because I'm already known,
right,
but I'm not known as a comedian.
Right, you're not a new face, but you're a new face.
So it's that weird thing, and since I didn't come up with a lot of comedians, I'm kind of not in the community, but
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's kind of, I don't know, it's disheartening at times because I'm not a part of the community at times, but I perform at all the clubs.
You keep yourself out of that a little bit.
I do. I do, because I go home to my family.
And also you don't want to, if you said to me backstage, you don't want to you don't like watching other comedians because you don't want to.
I never want to get a concept.
Well, that's all I want to do. Steal a joke.
Steal a joke.
But at the same time, I think you're missing out a little bit. And I understand. But you could go back 40 years with something that you couldn't possibly steal, but you could pick up something. You know what I mean?
No. I get what you're saying, but
I also understand what you're saying.
But I have a family, so I want to get home.
Right.
But the hanging out is for your 20s. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't hang out.
Now it's kind of like I see when Rogan's out with Segura, like all these big time people stop by because that's his crew and they all came. I don't have that. And that's kind of like, oh, that's a bummer. I wish I would have started comedy earlier. But then my mind wasn't. I probably would have been shit. You know what I mean? I had nothing to talk about back then. I never knew I wanted to do stand-up till I was like 35.
Why did you start doing it?
I was on Chelsea Lately.
Oh, okay. As a correspondent.
I
did warm-up for that show. It would be hilarious if I was the warm-up guy when you were there and you just don't remember.
And rest in peace, but Brody was there too when I knew Brody. But I was on that show, so everywhere I flew to interview celebrities, people would go, hey, where are you performing? Because they just thought I was a comedian. And then I was like, oh, my Asian side kicked in and was like, oh, opportunity. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity and actually try to do stand-up. And the first time I went up, it was magic. Orlando Leyba taped me.
Oh, okay.
My first
so you have it?
He has it. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. So I did 15 minutes my first set. And I called my mom
when I
got off stage, called my mom and said, this is what I was born to do. And I love it, man. And I love it. And I love the growth I'm having at this club. Because
doing it every night is nice for you, obviously.
And I don't care about crushing every time. Like sometimes
You're not. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. You are. You're a very consistent act.
Yeah, but I love sometimes when the audience is more mellow, just hanging back on the wall and just.
Well, I even sometimes I comment to you.
Yeah, you do.
I say, oh, your energy was, you match, and that's a tough thing to do, to match their energy, because I'm energetic, and even when I try to lower my energy, I'm still energetic, and I go, oh, geez, I have too much energy for you. I'll comment on it.
I know if I'm not going to get the rolling thunder laughs, like when it's a hot crowd, I still get the same laughs, but it's at the more mellow level where they're at.
You always have to do what you do, though, even if it's a lower energy.
Absolutely.
I see people just all of a sudden change because of a small crowd. I'm like, no.
No, if there's one person, I'm going to give him a shot.
Dennis Blair, God bless him. He comes out, there's 4 people here. He just comes out screaming. Yeah. Guitar, it's hilarious to me.
Oh, I got to get Dennis Blair on. He's opened up for everybody.
He remembers his stories, too.
Yeah.
But just for laughs, we were talking about Joe. It's a quick story, but Joe Rogan's manager at the time was a national wrestling, he was in the, high school wrestling. He was well known, and I had wrestled too, and we were talking, and it was, so we wrestled at midnight at the Just for Laughs, and Joe Rogan was in his corner as his corner.
Wait, you wrestled Joe Rogan?
I wrestled his manager,
Jeff
Sussman, and Rick Dukeman, who has passed away since then, was my coach. But I just remember it was.
And who won? Who won?
I would imagine he did. I don't remember, but at the same time, he was weighed a lot less.
How do you not remember nothing?
Because
Mark?
It was for fun. It was,
I would have still remember who won.
And, it was 3 a.m, and I remember doing it.
Okay.
Maybe nobody won.
Okay.
It wasn't a legit thing. There wasn't any.
It was a Mayweather and Logan fight. No, just no winner.
It was
at
an
the end
exhibition.
All right.
I loved Joe. Joe was such. I mean, I haven't seen him.
He's a sweetheart,
but
man.
He was. Yeah, the MMA stuff is him, kind of based and honest, decent guy.
And you know what? I know we keep going on. We got to finish this podcast, but one thing I'm upset with myself on is when I listen to Rogan, like I have nothing that he's in the MMA. I'm trying to find this thing I'm super interested in, but comedy, all that, that's what I'm interested in. Like he has MMA, he knows about cars, he knows about, like, I really have nothing outside of comedy that I love beside my family,
If you had said 20, 30 years ago that Joe Rogan would be doing his podcast and people would be looking up to him for knowledge and advice, I would have said that's not going to happen. Mark Maron, on the other hand, was always that kind of intellectual. He was another guy that was around that had great material, and everyone was really good back then.
All right, well, we got a show in like an hour, so we got to wrap this up. But you'll come back, right, Mark?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, this is the test show that nobody will see, right?
No, they'll see it. It'll just be all blurry, and the camera will be all fucked up, but it'll be good. Brian, what's up, Brian?
Yeah, I think there's actually something you haven't talked about. I think you should. You had a great stand-up career, but you also were on TV a lot.
Yes.
Make Me Laugh, Friends.
Let's talk
about Okay, let's talk about Friends. Tell me, you were the Mattress King in Friends?
I was the Mattress King in Friends, which is amazing. It was one episode, but it's really what people kind of remember or
What's
recognize me from.
Brian, he's the sound guy here as well at the Cellar, and he'll mention...
He never did until recently.
Because Friends is back, they had that reunion. But he'll mention it, and people will scream for that.
Yeah.
They still remember
we'll do it quickly, but I told you a story. People recognize you, and you're on TV a lot, and people come up to you. Somebody after the show came up to me, a woman, and she was shaking. She goes, you're the Mattress King, and like, you're the Mattress King on Friends. And she was so nervous, and I said, you're messing with me. That's mean, She's like, no, you're the. And she showed me. She pulled up her thing, and she had Friends tattoos all over the place.
Really?
So she was real, and I was like, oh man, that's kind of sweet, but it was kind of.
What season were you in? What season and episode? I know you got.
I don't know. Season 3, episode 7. No, something. It was like season 3, episode 7 or 8.
Hold on. What are we gonna play?
There's the back of my head right there.
Where is it?
Second row down. That's me. Oh, that's me.
Is that you as the Mattress King?
That's me as the Mattress King.
Wow.
And I'm proud of this job because I got this audition. As you know, you get auditions a lot.
Yeah.
I got this audition without knowing anybody. Nobody on the show knew me. The casting director knew me.
How'd you get it there?
I had an agent that sent me in, but I didn't. A lot of times in show business, it's who you know. And I got the job. I remember it was down to me and another guy. We're in the room. We're reading each other. And I ended up getting the job. And the whole week, I only had 3 lines. And then 2 minutes before I'm about to shoot, they go, "Oh, here's your new lines." I'm like, "New lines?" I'd been memorizing these 3 lines. And they gave me 3 pages of dialogue. And we're shooting in 20 minutes. Literally 3 pages of dialogue. Because I'm on a commercial.
Yeah.
And so I leaned back. I'm like, "Oh, no." And I'm trying to read it, and I couldn't learn it. I went up to the producer, and I said, "Listen, this is a commercial. Can we put my lines on a cue card? Because that's what this guy would be doing anyway." And they go, "Oh, that's a great idea." So I'm kind of reading it here. You can tell.
Ah, okay.
It's kind of funny, but so
dude, you must have been so freaked out when they handed you.
I was freaked out because I'd memorized the 3 or 4 lines I had, and then
do you remember the lines? The 3 or 4 lines that what you originally had?
It was probably the same thing, but then
they
had realized I was going to be in the background, so I had to be saying something.
Ah,
so they kept on adding it,
That's now when you were on set, was everybody nice? What was the atmosphere?
Yeah, do you want me to tell you more stories?
I
feel bad.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Ray Romano, his show had been on like a week or 2, so nobody really knew who he was as far as I knew. And he said, "Can I come to the taping? Or can I come to rehearsal?" He was on the lot, probably.
But Friends was like huge at that time.
Friends was just getting huge. It was the 3rd season, but it was obviously,
it was massive,
you could tell they knew it was coming. They were very nice to me, by the way, all of them. And he said, "Can I come?" And I was like, "Sure." And I did my rehearsal, and we're walking back to my dressing room, and David Schwimmer is walking towards us in this little hallway, and he walks by us, and we nod to him, and then he stops and he goes, "Ray Romano," and he just freaked out. He goes, "Oh my God, I love your show." And when he left, David Schwimmer left, and I said to Ray, "This is the weirdest thing. I mean, you're Ray Romano, you're my friend, and David Schwimmer just stopped you and freaked out." I said, "Don't you think it should have been the other way around?"
Isn't it kind of surreal too? Because we both have a lot of friends that's very successful, and people know it's kind of surreal knowing that you know these people, isn't it? Oh,
yeah. Well,
by the way, Mark has his dog here.
Hi, Millie.
Millie's here.
Come here. Don't do that. Come here. Come on. Yeah. I mean, and I play poker with all these people that are incredibly much more successful than me and have millions of dollars. So
do they still take your money though?
Well, we only play for like $60, but I take their money because they don't care about the money.
Yeah, right.
They're just telling stories, and I'm like, "Oh, queen, he's got a queen, he's got an ace."
All right. Well, now we got to go.
Wait, I got another.
But
I'm one of the comedians that I won't mention. I won't get off stage.
Yeah, right. All right.
That could be applied to a lot of comedians.
We don't have time. Next time you're on, we got to talk about your craziest story in Vegas. We'll talk about that next time. Thanks for checking out the Yo Show. Wait, Brian, what do you got? You got anything else, Brian? Are we all good?
I have a good fact.
Okay, this Brian's fact of the show.
I don't know what it is.
At the end of every show, he's going to bring an interesting fact. Go
ahead,
Brian.
Right when you told me, I thought of my first one, and I knew it was a good one. It's so here in Vegas, when you get either drunk in a casino or caught stealing or something, they 86 you. You can never go back. And I learned that it's from the mob days. It means 8 miles out of town, 6 feet underground.
Look, I never knew that.
I didn't.
That's why they say 86.
Fact. I think we should open with these facts next time.
8, maybe. So 8. I think so. It's that strong. Yeah, your breath stinks.
No, it smells like bee spray.
It's Lysol.
Oh, probably is. Right?
Yeah. 8 miles
I
out
didn't
of
know
town.
that. 8 miles and 6 feet under. Huh?
Look at that. See, that's why we got Brian.
Wait, so why'd you think of that? Because you're going to 86 me right now?
Yeah, because it's over. It's over. The podcast is over. All right, thanks for hanging, man.
Thanks, buddy.
I'll see you in
20 minutes.
See you in 20 minutes later.